Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. We don't have too much time to waste because we have a ton of things to go over, and this is going to be the next exploration video. In this case it's going to be 7.22. Now I already did upload a video earlier where I went over one path specifically in detail, how you can counter it with any champion given. So I'm gonna briefly mention that one, but we're not gonna focus on it too much. However, let's just take all of them in order, and we're gonna get where we want to go, hopefully quickly, because we also have 3 bosses to discuss. Right, so we have this first one: Wax On, Wax Off, Rust and Ruin, Mystic Wrath, Power Build-Up, Special Burst Lockdown. Now, it's fairly straightforward path. Special Burst Lockdown can be quite annoying if you happen to be running Suicide Masteries, because every time opponents use special attacks, they will heal block and armor break you, so that is something to keep in mind. Obviously, the continuous armor breaks will not work very well for Ghost specifically, so even though Ghost is great for majority of the paths, you absolutely should not use Ghost here. Power Buildup can be very helpful, especially with the way this path is designed and intended. As you can see, Mystic Champions get 125% attack increase. So you're quite clearly meant to use some Mystic Champions. And other than that, every time you nullify something, you basically go debuff, you purify all the debuffs. Therefore, you can ignore Rust and Ruin. However, Rust and Ruin in itself doesn't really do anything too bad for you. You just gain some armor breaks, and so long as you don't get hit, you can just ignore the entire thing. So for all intents and purposes, really the only kind of intrusive node here is Special Burst Lockdown, and that means you can run any champion that does not suffer from having armor break or heal block placed on them. However, obviously the advised strategy is to rely on Mystic Champions, because they do get 125% attack increase, and at that point pretty much any Mystic Champion is going to do great. If you want to have a bit more fun, however, Dragonman is actually a very solid option here, because he will not only get 125% attack increase, you will also be having armor breaks placed on you plenty of times, and that means opponents are going to also take some degeneration damage, just to kind of like add a bit more fun on top of everything else. But yeah, as far as the opponents goes, you can start off with Hyperion, which is a classic Mystic food. Then you can have Bischoff, which you can cheese with Dr. Doom and have him kill himself just by not letting him throw a special attack. Captain Marvel, very quick Mystic champion. Victim, Red Skull, same thing, starts with plenty of armor buffs. Only somewhat tricky fight here, I guess, would be Apocalypse. But again, with Mystic champions, you probably have quite good options to counter him. Let's say Dr. Doom, just don't let him use special attacks and you're going to be good. So fairly straightforward lane. You can use almost any champion. Ideally want to rely on Mystic champions. Any champion that nullifies will be quite cool. And also, due to the power build-up, if you push opponents past 2 bars of power, they gain prowesses, and that will give you even more buffs to nullify, thus feeding Mystic Dispersion. Mystic Dispersion is definitely advised here on this lane. Move on to the next one, Superiority Top Dog. That means you should aim to have class advantage for pretty much every single fight that you enter. And then every time Power Snack triggers, you will gain immunity to Nullify, Stagger, and things like that. So you're basically going to go immune to Power Snack. So even though Power Snack is on this lane, for most part, you don't really have to worry about. However, I'm still not really a big fan of this lane at all, because Hard Knock Life is a very, very annoying node. I hate it. It's one of the most annoyingly overspammed nodes, and this is one of the poorest lanes in terms of interaction. Basically, every time you perform a parry, you get a passive disorient on you. It's not even a proper debuff, and there's no way around it. That means you don't want to parry. Now, the 2 classes of champions that you're meant to use here are basically told to you in this Tech Ascendancy node that is straight out of map 7 previous season. Tech and Cosmic Champions is what you want to use, and Mutant Champions is what you want to avoid to use. So the idea is that you bring in Tech and Cosmic Champions, and you alternate every fight between having class advantage. So use Cosmic against Vulture, use Tech against Archangel, use Cosmic against Sentinel. The lane in itself, there are no real hard opponents. There's Sentinel, but that's about as hard as it gets, and I guess this Green Goblin, but there's just nothing too special. Basically, the Power Snack node, for most part, has been made irrelevant, and this Hard Knock Life, yeah, it's basically a vanilla path. So use whichever champions you want, ideally from Tekken Cosmic class, and you're going to be done and dusted. No magic to it. Now let's move on to the two top lanes. Let's start with this one where we have Ebb and Flow, Intercept, Foresight, Combo Party, and Aggressive. Now this, as I said before, is definitely Ghost lane, because you get 200% attack fury every time you intercept the opponent, and with Ghost that's easier than anything. And other than that, you also need to perform an intercept in order to remove protection from them. So in total, you spend the vast majority of the fight having 240% attack increase, I believe, and then some extra cruelty buffs from Combo Party. So your damage multipliers are there. It's going to be very quick, very easy lane. Keep in mind that Ghost should not be used against Cosmic Ghost Rider because you can start the fight with armor break debuff on you. But obviously, you can use pretty much any champion so long as you feel confident intercepting. If you don't feel confident intercepting, once again, as a reminder, Mole-Man, Killmonger, Elsa Bloodstone, Professor X, plenty of other champions offer you guaranteed fail-safe methods how to intercept. In fact, I have made a video about assisted intercept champions. If you want to go through all three of the main game mechanics that can help you intercept on demand with no repercussions, go check that video out. But we're going to be moving on to path number 4. So superiority top dog again. So you want to have class advantage whenever you enter these fights, and this class advantage will basically give you 50% fury instead of 10% fury whenever you knock down the opponent if they have fury effect active. So that's it. That's what it does. It just puts a weakness on opponents. Why weakness? Because it's meant to kind of counteract this Oscillate lane. However, Oscillate is still annoying as heck lane, where obviously opponents are extremely aggressive when the Fury is on, they're extremely defensive when the armor phase is on. However, there is the weak link node that helps you with that superiority node, where while the defender is suffering from a weakness or disorient debuff, the attacker deals a burst of physical damage on all basic attacks equal to 50% of their attack. So you can have some relatively helpful damage increase, but it really doesn't matter all that much if opponents have weakness active. And then we have Footloose. Now, schematically, actually they chose the perfect classes, because obviously the two best ways how to deal with Footloose is either put slow debuff on the opponent, in which case you can ignore Evade and Unstoppable, or nullify those buffs. And that is exactly what you're meant to do here, because Science is the class that has most frequent and easy access to slow out of all of them there. You're meant to use Science champions, and you're meant to use Mystic champions against Cosmic champions in order to get the class advantage. All in all, not one of my favorite lanes. However, it's fairly uncomplex, so to say. You basically just have to deal with Footloose and Oscillate. That tiny little bit of damage increase really doesn't amount to much for most part. Therefore, this lane is somewhat more time consuming. And obviously, you still need to make sure that you have either the nullify effects ready to go whenever they throw special attacks, or you have that slow debuff active. It's nothing tragic, it's just nothing exciting either. One of those kind of like more mild, uninteresting lanes of 7.2. There really aren't that many of them, where I feel 7.22 is one of the more dull quests in what otherwise is extremely exciting piece of content. So yeah, no real cheese methods. You just want to bring in your She-Hulks, your Spider-Gwens, your Red Guardians, your whoever else has access to slow debuffs, and then you want to bring in your Dr. Doom, your Clairvoyant, your Sorcerer Supreme, or whoever else you have ranked up in Mystic, and that's it. You can be just fine, but no magic numbers there. Now, this lane, I made a special video about, because there is Particle Protector and Micro Reflect, which is a very annoying node combination. Basically, you will take a lot of damage back every time you glance. And there are obviously champions who could ignore it, like Omega Red, like Gambit, like Daredevil Hell's Kitchen, I believe Strife as well, and a couple of others. There is Namor, who can reflect it back, which is definitely the easiest option for this lane. Just bring in Namor and enjoy a bit of extra damage. Or you can also rely on Quake and Archangel to bypass these nodes. However, you can actually do these lanes with pretty much any skill and mutant champions, because those are the classes that you need to bring in. technically, and every time you dex, you place a disorient debuff on them, and then as you keep striking them, you can pause that disorient, and if you have like 3 disorients on the opponent, they will pretty much never land. So if need be, you can do these lanes with any champion, but ideally you still probably want to bring in like Namor or Archangel or whoever, just to have like a bit quicker and easier time and how to worry less about all of this macro reflect thing. However, as I mentioned before, yes, any champion can work for it. I uploaded a video specifically for this lane earlier today where I was using some random champions like Goldpool and Black Widow, Deadly Origin, stuff like that. Basically just working within the confines of the nodes themselves. But again, Archangel, Quake, Namor, Omega Red can easily just bypass this damage back as well. Right, and last one, last lane is Power Shield, Life Transfer, Special Burst, Lockdown, Spectre of Ailment. Now, Spectre of Ailment is inconvenient node, but it's kind of redundant because every time opponents launch a special attack, they place heal block on you anyways. What Spectre of Ailment does is it reduces your regeneration potency by 33% for each non-damaging debuff on you. But it really didn't mean too much in the in the entire fight. So yeah, the main 2 nodes obviously are Life Transfer and Power Shield, where you can heal up every single fight and finish the lane with full health bar. You do need to keep in mind that you need access to special attacks quite frequently. However, you also at the same time need to play around Special Burst, Lockdown, where if you do not time your special attacks correctly, you might just be wasting a special and you're going to be heal blocked and you're not going to regen anything. So ideally, you kind of want either power control champions and prevent opponents from throwing special attacks in the first place, like let's say magic. You can just magic your way out of this thing very easily. Or you want champions that shrug off debuffs from the opponents, like Kingpin, like Crossbones, like Shang-Chi or whoever, because then opponents will throw their special attack, they're going to place heal block and armor break on you, you shrug it off and you're free to throw your own special attacks. All in all, the lane has what? Black Widow, Deadly Origins, Longshot, Miles Morales, Phoenix, Black Panther, Civil War, and Medusa, so none of those champions are really that hard to deal with, and it's one of the easier lanes for sure, especially if you know what you're doing. So you want to basically rely on one of 3 type of champions. Number 1, champions who have improved power gain options. Number 2, champions that have good power control on opponent and reduce the amount of special attacks opponents can throw. Number 3, just the champions that shrug off that heal block and armor break, and you're going to be good. Now let's take a look at the bosses wherever they are. Here we go, in the very middle. So let's start from left to right, because Tigra is pretty much the easiest boss. Now, Wombo combo node doesn't really amount to much. Basically, don't get hit. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. However, it can help you deal more direct damage to Tigra and finish out the fight quicker. Staggering Beauty is actually quite cool because if you are close to opponent, you get stagger debuffs placed on you. And those debuffs can be utilized in several different ways, but most straightforward one would be willpower healing, so why not? Now, there is Prey on the Weak that will let Tigra gain more power every time a debuff is nullified or expires. So you basically, that's kind of like their version of Mystic Dispersion in this fight. But you get gifted with Heavy Assault, which is kind of like the coolest node if you want to bring in Archangel, because Archangels are going to absolutely melt this one. But I have seen a plethora of champions being used to solo Tigra. Obviously, Human Torch is a wonderful option. I have seen some Tigra on Tigra violence. In general, there can be a very simple, straightforward playstyle where you just parry heavy, you deal a fair amount more damage, and if your heavy attacks happen to deal some sort of damage over time effects or just be very beefy in general, you're probably going to have quite good time. So let's say, I don't know, bring in Warlock, every heavy attack is going to have 500% potent bleed. Cool. Job's done, not too hard. Obviously, you still need to be aware of the fact that Tiger's specials can go unblockable middle way through, so you should know how to conveniently get out of the way. Or alternatively, you can just try and power control with champions like Magic, so on and so forth, and have a fairly easy fight. Now, White Magneto is somewhat trickier of a fight, even though I actually did solo this fight earlier today with like Black Widow, Deadly Origins, just to see if you can pretty much use any champion, and you can. Now, while the Iron is Hot is actually quite cool lane, where if opponent's back is against the wall, and you strike them, you gain a prowess buff. However, for each prowess buff that you have active on you, White Magneto has increased power gain. Now, you consume all the prowesses whenever you use special attack, but still the end result is where White Magneto gains quite significantly more power. And here the main thing is that you are quite confident and comfortable evading White Magneto's special attacks, which are, by the way, completely unblockable. And he also has power buildup, which is going to probably let him gain a fair amount of prowess charges of his own. And then we have Special Connoisseur, so only special attacks really deal proper damage. Now, the fight might sound quite tricky, but it really isn't. It's just a very fast-paced fight. If you have ever fought against White Magneto in AQ Map 7, it's very similar, where you have to pretty much constantly bait out that level 1, dodge it, punish it, dodge it, punish it, dodge it, punish it. It's a very fast-paced fight. Now, if you do not feel confident evading his special one, number one, you can still Quake it. There's no problem that Quake would have in this fight. Just Quake it into Oblivion, no problem. Or alternatively, you can use Magic, because Magic can keep him to the wall, can give you a ton of prowess damage, and will prevent him from throwing any special attacks. So Magic is a fantastic option here as well. Or my initial fight, the first champion that I tried here was Black Widow Clairvoyant. I went into my poison phase, and I kept opponent to the wall, and I basically just blocked and dropped level 2 and stole his power, and after a single combo I was back up at level 2, and it was kind of like infinite level 2 spam. But yeah, again, if you are relatively confident and comfortable, you can just use pretty much any, ideally non-metal champion, and you're going to do just fine, and not the worst boss in the quest, in the chapter. And now we have Guardian. Now, Guardian has Power Shield node, and that in itself is quite cheeky, because as we all know, Guardian likes to auto-block a lot of stuff. So there is that. So the immediate answer there, the more straightforward answer is unblockable special attacks. Now, he cannot auto-block unblockable special attacks from non-mutant champions. Mutant champion special attacks can still be blocked, but let's say if you happen to have Ghost with Wasp Synergy or Corvus, you cannot auto-block those, and you're going to be dealing a ton of damage. So that is a potential workaround there. Or alternatively, you can drop level 3s. He cannot auto-block level 3s, so Hyperion or Dragon Man should be quite decent alternatives with a persistent power gain. Now, the rest of the nodes there are Aggression Armor, which is kind of whatever. Do Not Disturb, yeah, well, again, nothing too special. Heavy-Handed, again, nothing important, and True Strike. Now, there is an alternative way how to get around it, and that is Damage Over Time effects. Damage Over Time effects bypass the the Power Shield node in itself. However, keep in mind that Guardian has super high bleed and energy damage resistance, so shock debuffs, bleed debuffs, incinerate debuffs, cold snap debuffs, none of them will typically do too much damage. However, that still leaves you with poison, so Immortal Abomination would be also a fantastic counter here, because not only he will take full amount of poison damage, but on top of that, whenever Immortal Abomination gets the 10 poison stacks, you have this acid burn, and however it is called, an opponent, and all your attacks are unblockable. So you will also be able to drop your special attacks quite freely. And last option that many people think would not work, but what I personally used the first time around here was Human Torch. Now, even though Guardian has really crazily high energy resistance, all of his attacks are energy. His special attacks give you like 4 or 5 smolders. And that was a strategy that I did use, even though he takes only like 10% of energy damage. But if you give Human Torch enough smolders, he's still gonna nuke down anyone so long as there's any damage getting through it. And that was exactly the case. Instead of being 50 hit fight, it was 80 or 90 hit fight. But Human Torch definitely nuked this guy down very easily for me as well. So those are the best options for all the bosses. Which one is going to be the easiest kind of depends on your preferences. I'd probably say that Tigra is the quickest and easiest one, because you have that heavy assault and you have extra damage modifier. So bring in Human Torch and Heavy Her, or bring in Archangel and Heavy Her, or Warlock and Heavy Her, and you're just going to be doing dandy and fine. Not much trouble there. that is about it for this quest, and I'm gonna be back tomorrow with the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about